Now we'll join together in the spirit of prayer and meditation. May we have reflection and doubt in both our failures and successes, in all the ages and stages of our lives. May we learn to pause and examine where we are, who we are, where we are going, and where and who we are becoming. May we learn to pause before we choose, that we may make better choices. And when we have made bad choices, do what we can to repair them. Repair what is wrong and learn from what we did badly. Our biggest mistake is not to learn from our mistakes. May we consider other ways of doing things, other ways of being, even if we do not choose to follow those ways, so that we may appreciate what they offer, so that we may grow in our understanding of the varieties and diversities of being. May we not drag each other down, but help each other to create a greater goodness than we knew how to do by ourselves. A greater goodness that we cannot achieve alone. May we learn now and always through our imperfections, through our perfections. May we have the power of blessing if we can make it so, to make other people's lives better. May we learn and know and exercise that love is greater than hate. And in our choices, may we love and reject hate and anger. May we choose with courage. May we choose with generosity. May we choose with love, steadfast and true, to bless other lives and our own. Amen. Sheila?
I'm going to play a musical prelude interlude. It's a small jazz piece by James Williams, Images of Things to Come. you.
Our hymn is Be Thou My Vision. Please mute.
There. Oh, I've gotten bigger. Slightly off the subject, but years ago, we lived in a parsonage that had an electric snow shovel. I see them now on television with batteries. This had a long cord that you had to drag behind you, but it was a wonderful gadget. I mean, it blew the snow, and so if you're thinking of a new snow shovel, look at the electric ones. Anyhow, some years ago there was a fad for what's called the elevator speech. You are talking with someone on an elevator and you have 20 or 30 seconds, or if it's a really tall building, maybe 40 or 50, to explain something, to sell something, to whatever. And Unitarian Universalist ministers that go to meetings and they would talk about these elevator speeches. If you had 30 seconds to explain to somebody what your church was about, wanted them to understand it, what would you say? Well, I was never good at it. I get stuck on the history. Ask me for an elevator speech about church, and I would be saying the first parish church was organized in 1663, and by that time the elevator door is opening. The elevator speech, however, has a long history. It's at least 2,000 years old, even though we didn't have elevators in those years. There was a rabbi named Hillel, Hillel, called Hillel the Elder, who lived from 110 before the Christian era to the 10th year of the Christian era. He's about 100 years old. Died when Jesus would have been about 10 years old. So they obviously never met. But Rabbi, he lived in Jerusalem, but he was asked one day to explain the Torah while standing on one foot. Obviously a cynical request. The Torah is over 2,000 years old. It's a large collection of writings. The whole of what Christians call the Old Testament, the big section in the Bible, and a lot of added material of discussion and commentary and teachings and ideas and thought. So someone said to him, explain the Torah, all of this writing, while standing on one foot. And the good rabbi stood on one foot and said, that which is hateful to you, do not do to your fellow. That is the whole Torah. The rest is explanation. Go and learn. This, of course, is the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, or do not do to others what you would not have them do to you. There are modern elevator speeches. One of my favorites is that of the philosopher George Santayana. Santayana was born in Spain in 1863. His mother was Spanish, but had been married to an American. She was a widow, and moved to America when Santayana was 3. And he ended up teaching philosophy at Harvard University. He was what they called a naturalist in those days, an atheist in these days. Lived in Cambridge, got up early every day when he was teaching to go to Mass at the local Catholic church in Cambridge. One day, someone on the Harvard faculty said to him, what do you do that for? You're an unbeliever, you're an atheist. Why in the world do you go to Mass every morning? And Santayana gave a wonderful answer. There is no God, and Mary is his mother. What? It's an appreciation of the faith he was raised in, and a recognition of the value of the expression of your religious values. Life is more than one of my history professors called it. Life is more than just one damn thing after another. Life is, R.S. Thomas, a British poet, said religion is the poetry of life. Religion is the poetry of life. And Santayana was participating in, celebrating, enjoying that poetry. Reverend Stephen Lingwood, British Unitarian, has a book out called Seeking Paradise. And he gives us an elevator speech. We do not need to be successful. We need to be faithful. We need to not lose faith in the sense that another world is possible and already here. A garden of paradise where we overcome the alienation with our bodies, our neighbors, our planet, and our God. Joan of Arc, sentenced to be burned at the stake. I am not afraid. I was born to do this. Or Christina Rossetti describes faith. Poet, who has seen the wind? Neither you nor I. But when the trees bow down their heads, the wind is passing by. Our British compatriots established at Manchester College at Oxford University in 1889, replacing an academy that they had founded in 1786 for the training of ministers. When they opened the college, they had also built a chapel. And the chapel was dedicated to, quote, leaving each generation free to grow and to express its own way of faith and aspiration, which is a wonderful idea. Every generation to worship as they find appropriate, and a wonderful elevator speech. Every generation to grow and express in its own way its faith and aspiration. There are 6 stained glass windows in the chapel which depict the story of creation, the biblical story of creation. And on each of these windows are the words, and pardon my French, I don't speak it, Elargise Dieu, which can be translated, set God free. Words from French philosopher Denis Diderot, writing in 1746, set God free, see him everywhere where indeed he is, or say that he does not exist at all. A great elevator speech. Set God free, see him everywhere. God is not confined to church or temple or mosque or synagogue or place of worship or any faith or set of beliefs. Any difference is, it's poetry. We're trying to find the words to sum up what we believe. This church in Widrick was founded in 1663. There had to be a church because in those days you couldn't have a town without a church. In fact, the churches, the towns are the size they are because, borders vary, but the rule was that you sort of had to have a 6-mile wide area with a church in the center because you walked to church, or if you were rich or lucky, you had a horse and wagon. But, so if it was 6 miles from one border of the town to the next and the church was in the center, you could walk to church in about an hour on Sunday morning, which is good exercise. So the towns, as they were organized, the first thing they had to do was establish a church. People that started this church would be amazed if they came to church and our hymns and our sermons and our habits. In the good old days, the minister had an hourglass sitting on the pulpit in front of him, and he was expected to turn it at least twice and preferably 3 times. And you started church at 10 o'clock in the morning, and at noon you took a break for lunch, and then you went back to church and finished for the service for another hour or so. So, these 1663 founders of this church. But this is the vision of the people who started that college in Manchester. Each generation free to grow and express in its own way its faith and aspiration. And I hope this church is here another 100, 200, 300 years. And I have no idea what they're going to be like if they are. But that's wonderful. We left them something worth having. And they express their faith and their belief. They will express their faith and belief in their way, not in ours. We are not the carriers of what we used to call faith once delivered to the saints. So you can't change anything. People who believe in the faith once delivered to the saints want us to believe that faith, religion, was defined, explained once and for all, so we never can change. It's not, they don't believe in God, set God free, or express their faith in its own way. I had a professor at Andover Newton Theological School, class of 1986, where I went for what a fellow student described as remedial education. There was a sister, Letitia, who taught at the Catholic Seminary at Boston College, taught spiritual formation, how we build our spiritual lives. And the first day of class, Sister Letitia said, "We are not to argue about our religion in her classroom. If we want to argue, we can go outside of the classroom." She didn't want to listen to the arguments. And then she said, "My rule is God saves whom God chooses in whatever way God wishes. So be who you are and don't argue." She'd have been a great Unitarian Universalist, except she was happy being a Catholic nun. But that's a great elevator speech. God saves whom God chooses in whatever way God wishes. Julian of Norwich lived from 1342 to 1416. He was an anchorite. We don't have anchorites anymore. But in medieval times into modern times, cathedrals were these great big stone buildings, probably the most solid building in town except for the castle or fortress which defended the town and which the lord of the manor lived in. And people would build huts against the wall of the church because it was a solid place. And an anchorite was a woman who lived in one of those huts and had a little window. And she spent her life in prayer and meditation. She had a servant who fed her. And people would come up to the cell and knock on that little window, boom, 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 and she would open it, and they would talk to her, confess their sins, ask for advice, ask for comfort, ask for prayers, day or night. And this is what Julian did for most of her life. Offered advice, offered comfort, talked to people. And she wrote a book. And her elevator speech, all shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. And this was her statement of faith, and I think an elevator speech that buttresses up the hope in us. That whatever we are going through, all shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. Our offertory
Thank you, Julian Choir. And here is our benediction.
yes, and I have to unmute to get to it. The Buddha said, be lamps unto yourselves, be your own confidence. Hold to the truth within yourself as to the only lamp. Amen.